Well, I've almost lost my life several times. What I mean by that is losing oneself, identity of oneself, is one way to lose your life. And another way is by physical harm and actually someone hurting you. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that the things that happened to me in my life or the way I handle those things are good for anyone. I'm not passing judgment on anyone, and I'm not telling anybody to follow my path. All I'm saying and presenting here is a story of a man that lived through some pretty difficult times. Uh, 1946 is when I was born in a small town. I lived in Sulphur, Louisiana. My father worked in a refinery. And this is just right after World War II. And I had an older brother. He was 3 years older than I was. So we were kind of sidekicks, kind of hung together. But my first recollection of life, I was probably 2, 3 years of age. And I was walking towards my parents' bedroom because I had been startled. They had been arguing. And I stepped on the furnace, floor furnace. Back in those days, they had gas-burning floor furnaces, and burnt the bottom of my foot. And my dad came out and held me in his arms and said, "It's going to be okay. You know, you just burned your foot."
That government woman, no wife of mine, is gonna dress like that.
My parents fought every single day, every day. From the time I can remember, from 2, 3 years of age. You never knew if a plate was gonna fly across the room or something was gonna happen. And my brother and I would lay in bed at night just shaking because we were both kind of afraid of what was gonna happen. We feared more for, I think, our parents because we saw that they were not happy. Relationships early on in a child's life is important. So that influenced me greatly. And what I mean by that is that the child needs an example. He needs to see a loving mother and a loving father. Summers would come along and my brother and I would escape to my grandparents, and it was a whole different atmosphere. Everything they did took a lot of physical labor. They were farmers, and it was just the chores that they had to do every day just is unbelievable. But it was good for me because I was seeing the work ethics that these people had and the love that they had for each other and for what was going on. My greatest spiritual influence in life was my grandmother. My grandmother was a Sunday school teacher, sang in the choir, walked to church every Sunday, never missed, and I learned from her. My grandmother was probably my biggest reason why I had such strong beliefs. in life we go through these things that sometimes we don't have control over, and we start viewing ourselves in a different way. When I started school, I was a good student. Probably around the 5th or 6th grade, I started doing behavior that no one understood. At about 11 or 12 years old, you know, and I hate to talk about this, but I had an incident happen to me that where, and I don't want to talk about the details, but where this fella did some things to me that I felt was my fault. It altered me in a way that I didn't understand. I tried to hide what had happened. That really changed my identity and how I viewed myself. Believing it was my fault, believing I shouldn't have done those things. I should have changed it, I shouldn't have been there. And anybody that's been in that situation understands what I'm saying, because you blame yourself. So I started flunking in school. I repeated the 9th grade for 3 times. Stealing, I got caught stealing. Doing things that I knew not to do. I think the insecurities became so great, and the negativity around me, the way I saw myself and the way I viewed myself, finally hit the lowest point. My parents continued to fight every day, it seemed like, and it got to where it became very physical in time, where they were throwing things at each other. It was pretty bad. The night I ran away is the night that my mother and I got in a really bad fight, and she was hitting me pretty hard. She caught me across the bridge of the nose with the heel of her shoe, a high heel shoe. And it stunned me pretty bad, so I kind of pushed her and she fell over the table. So I just hopped on my bike and took off. I actually hitchhiked from Louisiana to California. I wanted to be this surfer dude, man. I mean, I saw myself, I know all this stuff going on, I'm seeing myself as this guy that lived on the beach. I had it all figured out. I was gonna live on the beach, I was gonna surf. But the people I was staying with, if I remember right, got a phone call from the police. They finally found where I was at. But I ended up hitchhiking back home. And when I got home, my mother said, well, you have an option. You can go to reform school. That's what we called it in those days, reform school. Or you can go in the military. When I was stationed at one of my duty stations, I was a part of the rescue team. So when the jets would come in and if they had any trouble, we would put the fire out and get the pilot out of the plane. I befriended some of the local kids in the community, which were about my age. And they suggested for me to go talk to the principal of the school. Maybe I could enroll in high school and get my high school diploma if the Navy would give me permission. And they did. So I'm in high school, making good grades, giving me more confidence. You know, I tell people I finally felt the security and love that I wanted. February came along. This was February of 1966, I believe it was, that I got orders to go to Vietnam. So I had to leave the school. I was stationed on the USS Enterprise, which was a big aircraft carrier. And I'm looking at this enormous ship. I'm going, where do I go? What do I do? I go up and get up on the ship, salute to go on board, and I'll never forget what the guy said. The first guy I met on the ship. He said, you better have a string tied to your rack and one to your rear end because you're gonna get lost. We flew probably over 100 bomb sorties a day into North Vietnam. We'd have these young pilots climbing these aircraft and flying and bombing runs and put their life at risk. And there I am on the flight deck. I had an incident, plane turned on me, and you're taught to get out of the way of the exhaust of the jet. And I felt the heat and the pressure or the strong exhaust coming from the aircraft, and I thought I was going to get blown over the side. And it scared me to the point that I broke down in tears, and I just kind of froze after that. And today that bothers me still because I chickened out. I was very ashamed of myself. I got discharged, came home, and the first words out of my mom's mouth was, okay now son, you're out of the military, you still don't have a high school diploma. What are you gonna do with yourself? I looked at her and I said, well Mama, I'm gonna be a doctor. She kind of chuckled. I guess seeing things that I saw made me want to be giving. And I thought the epitome of education to me would be to get my medical degree. So I enrolled at the local university. Tried to enroll at the local university, but you had to have a high school diploma, so they gave me a GED exam. Somehow I passed that rascal, I don't know how. The first semester, I made straight Fs. But I met a young lady, my first wife, who had a big influence on me academically. She was working on her master's in physics. Very intelligent girl. Married for a very short while, but the lack of knowledge bothered me. So it gave me that crutch that I needed to put the fire in me. And so I thought if I could get educated, then I might have some confidence. And so I started really studying hard and working hard. And I had 8 4.0 semesters. After I finished college and graduated and got my BS degree, I still had that yearn for medical school. I'd get these letters each month from the school stating that I'm still being considered for acceptance. And the last letter would come around May or so. I got rejected from medical school 4 years in a row. It's an interesting thing, the way I got into dental school. I met a lady that was a friend of my mother's, and she was going to a function where the governor of the state was going to be there. So I sat down and wrote a handwritten letter and included my transcript in the letter. And I said, please ask him to read that letter. And he did. I got accepted to dental school within about 2 weeks. While I was there, I got a health profession scholarship through the Navy, which I was very proud of. Graduate from dental school, go back in the Navy, commissioned an ensign, stayed in the Navy, served that tour, and I received retirement papers from them in May of '90, and I retired from the Naval Reserves. You know, for a long time, people that made such an impact in my life were the ones that probably hurt me the most. And yes, I probably did have anger for those people for a while, but you know what? That's what shaped me who I am today. There's some photographs that I have from back when I was 3 or 4 years of age, and the person that I was standing closest to was my daddy. I always had my arm around his neck. For some reason, I gravitated towards him more than my mother. And I think I needed that contact from my mom more than I realized. And as I aged and got older, I finally realized that I missed that time. I missed that. This is really hard for me. It was a hard time. Mama got sick. She had a brain aneurysm. Before she went into a coma, her last few words to me were, did you apply to medical school? At the age of 45, I was accepted to medical school, finally, after all those years, and finished medical school at 49 years of age. I felt finally I had reached that goal that I had set for myself. When I was 60 years of age, I got in a bad auto accident and broke my neck in 3 places. I broke C2, 3, and 4, and that's the cervical vertebra. That's at the base of the skull. People that sustain those kind of fractures are on a ventilator for the rest of their life. The words out of the neurosurgeon's mouth is, I'm one lucky SOB, because I should be on a ventilator. After the accident, I started hearing music when I was asleep, and that's never happened to me before. So I'd have to get up out of bed and I'd write these lyrics down. And I pulled out my old guitar, which I hadn't played in many years, and just started strumming some chords, and I started writing music. And for some reason, it was something that I had to get out of me. Mr. and Mrs. Redbird sitting up in a tree. All these years of things that had gone on in my life, it started coming out as music. What a great way to cleanse myself, to allow this stuff to come out. When I look back on my life, the dreams that I've accomplished is academic achievement, because for so many years I was told that I could not do it. The experiences that I had, yeah, they were setbacks at a time, but what else do we have if you give up? I finally have become